Editing 101. Okay, so while we get this class going, just remember, if you have any questions for Editing 101, please put it in the questionnaire box, or otherwise wait till end of the class on there. Now, today I'm going to go into just the basic editing of the class. Tomorrow's class, 102 editing, is going to get into more of the advanced techniques of doing editing with more stitch files and more, or otherwise if someone has some questions, I may try to cover that. But I just want to make sure for the new people and have an understanding of what you could do with stock designs, the current embroidery designs that you may have, and how to get more productive, maybe changing the sequence of how it sews and more, to understand about editing or trouble designs that you may have. And you feel free to send your designs to me. As you can see, my email on the bottom. If you have any questions or problems, send me the original file if it was a DST, and then your edited version of the Wilcom EMB extension, and try to explain what you're trying to do or what you're having trouble with, and I will try to help you or cover in class if you would like me to cover in class maybe tomorrow or so. So the first thing for people that are new, this is a work area. I'm going to go ahead and say new, and for here you should go into your setups and calibrate your screen. There's a box right here. You will see, and take a plastic ruler, nothing that will magnify or distort your screen, and measure and put your values in here. Of course, I have US measurements. If you prefer metrics, you can go to metrics on there and change it from the drop-down list. To find these in here, they are called dockers or toolbars, and you will see by right-clicking you may add a docker or a toolbar, as you see on the top going up there. You know, if you have some of the additional tools, you could do that. I like to bring out some of my flyouts, so sometimes I may bring out a tool and dock them to the side on there instead of trying to grab the reshape tool and maybe do a stitch edit compared to a reshape edit on here, along with some of the reshaping tools on there. Now, there is shortcut keys, as you see when I do the reshape. You will see on the right-hand side, it says Settings. H is a shortcut. So if I click on the right click, I will bring my options, and I may have my settings of reshaping a tool on there. Now, there's other ways to get into this and go through here. I usually go through and say autosave about every 20 minutes. I like to turn off closest joint and be able to control my entering exit points instead of having the software do it. I like to make sure I remove my small stitches on filters output. So this will help remove those small stitches when you're editing or digitizing and get a cleaner stitch, so you're not pounding stitches and get thread breaks or thread frays because stitches are too short on there. So those are a couple things that I like to have on there. But you know, there's cut and paste properties and more. So these are a couple different things you may see through here through your list, and you could change that around on there. You could also go into your help area and go online and watch some of the online videos that Wilcom Australia or Wilcom America might have gave to Australia to upload, like some of these classes we did. So there's Wilcom Training, Wilcom Set, and Wilcom Galleries, and you may want to check those out along with my website. So I try to keep those a little different from the Wilcom's website, and you know, that's your choice. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to pull a recent design up here. Okay, let me see here. You know, I did some editing here. Let me go to open. And I'm going to just go into online training where some people might have submitted some designs or sent to me in the past on there. I might have had some classes of editing on here. Let's see. Nope, that's not what I want. Oh, I know what I want. I want to go to my L drive, unique drive, and training. So this way I can find training others. Whoops, wrong one. Sorry about that. Training others. Okay, so these are designs that someone might have sent to me or so forth. So I'm going to just go through here, go view, get a larger icon so I could maybe see some of these a little quicker through here, and hopefully find something that's more interesting through here. So let's see through here. Okay, that was something someone mentioned. I think I did that last class. They were trying to do a hat. Let me go through here and see if there's anything else on here. Let's just grab this one. This is back from E2. Someone submitted, and hopefully get a better understanding of how to work this on here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to pull up a design on here, and I like to bring up my color object list through here. So for those of you that may not know, that is your color object list is right there. Shift L is a quick way to put it. So if I do close it and say Shift L, it should bring it up, and then it's tacked down, or otherwise allows to open and close. You will see I got some vector art that was originally there. This is the original art that they had when they created the design. Whether they digitized it or they had someone else digitize it. I'm going to turn on my stitches. All I did is hit the S key, as you see, shows stitches. That way it shows stitches, and of course then you got the true view and more, which is the true view is the T key on there. So you could hide and lock your tools in there. So in case you don't want to move objects, you can right click and lock the object so it won't move. And that. You will see through here, these are probably a little thin lines as 4.404, that is 1 millimeter. I usually recommend not to do anything less than that of 1 millimeter when you're stitching. So this problem might have been they might have had some sewing in some of the areas and need to get these stitches in there. In fact, this almost looks like it was processed on here. So this was probably its file that was already processed on here. Well, I got a bunch of run stitches. Could have been, there's a manual stitch on there. So yeah, when you start seeing manual stitches, they might not have the full process on here. Could be wrong. So you might have some problems of stitches puckering out in corners or pulling in. So with the reshape tool, setting H, you will see the boundary. And also, once you have your color object list open, I'm going to tack that in there. So when I have that selected, you will see how it should select that object and how it travels. Now, you will also notice this design. You could travel through the design and see how well it sews by traveling by function. So that's a jump stitch, and whether you have any trimming right there, they could took this design, instead of having a trim and slow down the machine by 7 seconds of losing time and then tying it back in. That is such a small area. They could have traveled this design, because that is underneath that area, and the stitches is going the opposite direction, which would cover up the white. So that's the first thing I want to do is I see it's going through there, and it does this fill pattern to the bottom through here, but the next object right here is too far. So there's a couple ways of correcting this design. We could go to object properties, and we could go to the connectors after the object and see and change some of the settings through here. So this is after the object, and this is tie off. You will see through here they got a connection. If it's greater than 1, they want to create a tie off. But they do have a trim if it's 2, or if there is before a tie off, they would have a trim. The first thing I would do through here is I'm going to take a measurement of this object and this object, and I'm going to take out my drawing so that it might be a little less disturbing, maybe not, and measure with the M key. And I measure right here. That's 3 millimeters through here. 3 millimeters is not quite far. So I may want to take this design, go through object properties, do the connection, and I could always say turn off the trim. I could actually have it run to the next object. That way it would travel through there. Or otherwise, if I prefer maybe a quick jump or needle up or so forth, kind of like between your letters, may go from one letter to the next letter, I could turn this and change a value. I'm going to say run. So now when I travel back through this design and go through there, and you will see by the function, it goes right through there, but otherwise, once it goes through this design, it sews. There is no trim on the bottom here where it says prompt. See where it says prompt on there? If I go edit, undo, you will see how it goes through this. It says tie off and trim. Whoops, sorry, my menu got there. So it creates a stitch, 1, 2, 3 stitch, and then it jumps, 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 and jumps to trim. Now the functions of the amount of jumps is going to do is based on your machine. So if you go to your design format settings for your machine, you will see it should tell you there's going to be 3 jumps. If your machine, physical machine is set for a 4, your machine may not trim, but it will create 3 jumps. If your machine is created with a 3 jump or 2, then your machine should automatically read those jump and trim. Now, some machines have automatic commands that says tie off and trims, and that will be through your stitch list or machine language on there. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, and then it starts sewing. So as I said, when I had that object selected, whoops, the wrong object, that last object, I went through object properties, and I decided to say connection, and I decided to go run. So now it does not tie off and trim. You can, if you need to, force a connection to force a tie off. So you would say jump to always tie off, but do not trim. This will cause it to have a lock stitch, but it will cause it to jump to the next object. This is good for people maybe with the home sewing machine that needs to trim it by hand. They're doing one at a time, or someone's doing a small shop and they have design sewing for 15, 20 minutes and they're looking for a faster production, so they don't have the machine trim, but they do want the machine to tie off on there. So now that we have that, you can see it does the tie off and trim, or tie off and jumps to the next object. Of course, now it goes there and it goes to the next color, and we'll try to see what the next travel through here. Now you can see through here, this design has almost 2 colors on top of each other. So you have this object through here, and it starts there and ends there, but the next object is right on top of it with the same color, but it travels over here. So I'm going to take my stitches through there and try to, I could always go through and say hide others, so I can see a better object. As you can see through here, this is the red design. So I'm going to go through here and travel through there. And you can see it's traveling through that design, Whoops, I need to go to beginning, color change. Go back a couple of steps through here, back to the red. So you can see right there, it does have red. Why can I not have a trim? Maybe I want to say this is right next to each other and say my entering point, I want it right here. So now there is no trim through there, and it will travel through the design and start where the next entering point and exit point is to do the fill pattern. So now I saved another 7 seconds on production. So now I'm up to 14 seconds. And I can keep on going through this design and save a couple minutes on production time. And believe me, when you're losing 5, 10, 15 minutes on this trimming because you have lettering or designs and plus possibly thread pullouts because the machine trimmed but didn't quite catch, and then you got to rethread it because it started back up and the tail was not long enough, or it was too quick and didn't have enough time in. You could be down or lose a lot of production on there. So I'm going to go ahead and unhide the others. Whoops, unhide all, or show all, I'm sorry. So I just gone through and I seen that, and now I see another section, the red. Well, that red box in this area is a hole in here. So once again, I know there's stitches is traveling through there, and I know this is kind of hard to see sometimes through here, but you can see it's going through there, and then it goes right over here. But you notice how this thread is almost the same direction. I could actually take this and move this if that red is showing through and bringing it over. So hopefully now they have a tie off on this for some reason. So we're going to go object property and see why is it tying off when I have a run stitch right next to it in the same color. So I'm going to go object properties and go to my connections. And I see the connection is here is if one again. So it looks like this whole design, someone says if the next object is 1 millimeter farther, and if I take this entering point, take the stitches, this entering point, and take the one before there, and let's see here, I got to show my stitches here, and it's over here. I might solve it by moving it closer to that area on there, but I do have a tie off is in this object. So that's another thing is you need to see, okay, they have before a color change always tie off on the last object. So they're always tying off, but it did not trim. So that's another thing is you may not need that tie off because it's traveling around. So you're adding extra stitches and you're pounding those stitches in. So you may not need to have that tie off and through there, but only tie off before a trim or after a trim. So tie off, and this is after the object. So now we got this object through here, and it doesn't matter if that object had the original one of the connection through there that we originally had a little farther away. And that was, we had that connection over here. So it should still create that travel through there. So I could go through the other designs and try to hide the stitches. This is the older technique, is old-fashioned digitizers like to travel through the design on there, because as you see right through there, you know, there's other designs that they might have had in here, and then they go through another part of the design and start jumping all over the place. Right there, it's going to, oh, that's a different color there. So the other thing is you might have little gaps through here, and you can see this is 1 millimeter. There is pole compensation. You could add pole compensation, or you could process the whole design, because I know the whole border, except for maybe this one through here, is probably wide enough. Object properties, that's a 1.4, but this is, that's the same size. according to that. Am I mistaken? Yep, 1.14. This one, same thing. So they use the whole design through here, and let's see, 95 and object properties on here. Whoops. You may want to give a little more pole compensation to your design, through the whole design, and I don't know why that might not be input C. Let me see. Reshape handlebars H. Nope. This was a back and forth, so this is not going to tell me. So all I got to do is do a measurement on here. So that's almost 2. So I can go through designs and select by stitch types and more, or I could go through the design through here and see a bunch of input C's through here that I think I need more border width. I could go through here and change the values. Well, actually, one of them is different. That's on there. Object properties, 0.7 millimeters. So that's thin. So as I recommend 1 millimeter. This is over. So this one, I might have had trouble pounding stitches in here. So I may need to bring that up to my 1 millimeter. And I'm going to go ahead and actually zoom in there before box. So this one is like pounding the stitches, very thin border compared to the outside border. So object properties, I could go 1 millimeter and bring that a little bolder. You could also change the fill pattern or stitch spacing to be a different value. Another way to do this is if you're having certain trouble areas, you may want to select your object as the trouble object, and you may have some of this other area of that, crossman through here or whatever it may be. So I'm going to grab these 3 sections, all the satin stitches, and say, hey, I need to get more pole compensation or bigger border. You could go to your stitches and you could process it. Now I will get more into processing a little more on stitches, but I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I want more of a pole compensation, and maybe add a 0.1, because the original one on here, we'll take a quick look at that, is pole compensation. Is that 0.4? Wow, that must have been real skinny on there. Well, so that's probably over 1 millimeter if I measure the stitch length. But as I said, I'm going to grab that and this, and I go to stitch, process, I made to get it more pole compensation, or I could take less. I'm going to give it a 0.1, so it should go to 0.5. You see a little movement there. It was real quick, but now if I grab this and say object properties and say pole compensation is 0.5. And so 0.5 millimeters, add on to my input C, should be 1.5 millimeters thickness now. So if I go through here, boxes area, and that should give me enough more for my standard 7511 needles or 8012s, depending on what you use on here. And if I bring that, well, that actually says 2, because it's 1.5 on each end. So there was 0.5 and 0.5, so it's really now 2, because it's going beyond each side on the pole compensation. When you say pole compensation, it's from side 1 to side 2, so it's just like this fill pattern that makes a boundary. Take off the stitches. The stitches should go beyond 0.4 or 5, whatever that measurement is. Object properties, pole compensation, 0.6 they have here. So if I take my design and say hide all or hide others, and take my wireframes, take my measurement, put that wireframes up there so it stays there. There's my 0.6 approximate right there on there. So if I need to have problems, I'm getting gaps, and I want to say show all, and it could be all my fill patterns. I could go edit, select by stitch type. Whoops, edit, select by stitch type. I could do by colors or more. And maybe it's all my tatami stitches. I grab all my tatami fills, and I may want to change that fill pattern or process that a little more on there, because if I go right click object properties, it's going to show blank because they all have different values. But I could go into process stitches and change and give everything a more value of more pole compensation. This time I'm going to exaggerate 5. And you should probably see a lot of difference. I don't know if you saw that white area, probably right through here, came right to the edge. See how it changed? Now I should not have a gap after it sews because I might not have the proper underlay or stabilize the material. So there's another way you could do that. You can go through the design and say, hey, okay, the customer says I want to put this on a fleece now. You can select all your fill pattern and your satin or just certain parts of the object. And I'm just going to go say select by stitch type since a lot of my satin is on top. And I'm going to say tatami, so that's more of the whole base underneath. And I could go through this design and change the fabric type, object, apply style, apply, I always forget which area this is. Apply current properties, nope. Apply styles, nope. I always forget. Let's see, design, machine format, select. Okay, I'm drawing a blank today. So if someone knows where that is, about applying fabric, auto fabric assist, there apply the fabric type. Maybe you want to change this to a fleece. So now I'm going to go through and find my fleece settings, fleecy garment. And you notice the underlay through here. And I can say apply it. And now I apply that. And it should probably give it a fleecy, it says fleecy on there. And it probably change all my settings and my fill patterns and more on there. That's if you had a fabric settings on there. Now, sometimes when you digitize a certain way and override these values, they may not be the same. So if you do digitize and you have certain settings, and now I'm going to go edit, select all, say, hey, customer came, now he wants on a leather. So I'm going to say I'll apply fabric assist, and I'm going to go to leather or suede or so, and I'm going to go ahead and apply that. You will see the stitch count went way down from 16. You see the underlay is not as drastic through this left side area. So you could see this value because leather is not a woven material. The stitch spacing is 6.6 on there. Let's go edit, undo. It was originally at 0.35. So this way you're not making the leather and cutting it completely and destroying the leather on there. So that's another way of doing editing. Okay. So that kind of gives an idea of how to do some editing on there. And then I got about editing files for hats. Okay. So like I said, if you have questions, go ahead, type it in your questions on there. So I'm going to go File, Open. Let's see if we can get a design for that you may want to edit for hats. 2-color athletic fill. I don't know. Someone sent me this. And I'm just trying to see if there's something else in here that might be a little easier or a little complex or tricky to do a hat that might help you a little better to understand how to resequence, because I love to resequence with the new resequence tool. I used to do a lot of drag and dropping or resequence by numbers, and I'm not really finding anything that I don't know what this one is. But we could try to see if it starts from the bottom up, it goes up. That might be a better way. This is a name for a hat or so. This one would probably be one of the easier one, because this was the original file, and then this is test for editing or so. I did that probably. Let's just grab one of these files here and see take a look at it. Okay. So now I have this. Okay, this was definitely a process. Someone got this file through here. I could see a lot of manual stitches, and I'll cover that in tomorrow's section. And then we're going to say Shift R for redraw. Otherwise, that will be under View. And do a redraw through here. Slow redraw. Shift R. We're going to take a look at this and travel through here and see. This might be already pretty well for hats. A lot of underlay through here, and then it goes upwards. Yeah, this looks like it's already made for hats, except for the bottom half. Because right there, we could have resequenced this bottom half. That's keyboard lettering. That's the line. I like to start from the bottom up. So the first thing I would do is probably take this design and say, I want to sew that first, so I'm going to move it to the start. Now number 5 to the start. I could go through here, object properties. I see it's a small block. 1. Pole compensation, which I always recommend to have something that thin to have a little pole compensation. Underlay, you want to tack it down to a hat first, so I'm going to recommend a single run. Shorten stitches up on that. And then let's go object properties and see how they have this sequence. It's going left and bottom. So it's going from accounting, service, division. So one thing they have done with Wellcom is E3, you could break apart lettering. So you saw that was lettering through here, a couple lines. If I right click on this, I could go object, break apart. Now I have this to sew and that. Of course, I want to sew that one, and then I want to sew that one. I'm going to resequence by numbers, so now I've flipped on there, and now it sews that first and that one. But I want to actually take this, and as you see through this, I may want to start from the S, go N to S, and division starts with the D and N. So I'm going to go object properties, and I could go through here and say center out. And let's take connections and show my stitches through here. Let's see if that solves some of my problem. I'm going through here. And, of course, it's going through there and it's sewn middle out. So that one worked. Sometimes you don't get a chance to have that, or like the counting. You could do the individual letters and break that up. If I break this up, it's going to be individual letters. So I'm going to break that apart. Now I got my individual letters, but I could go to the box area and say, okay, my center design through here, I may want to sew the U, O, C, C, A, and then the N, T, I, N, G, sequence and resequence by the selection. So I'm going to go ahead through there. You will see that I have a lot of trims, because my entering is through here and tends to want to go right to left. I could have broken this up from the center out, or I could have had a sewn center out. So there's different ideas on there. I'm going to go back onto this and edit, undo. And I can say object properties, sequence from center out and end to the right. As you will see, it was sewn from there. So there's different ways about going at that. So that is your option. You may want to read the design first and see how well it goes on there. This way, closest point. But go back to the way I had it before. I actually had this. Oops, let's edit redo. I broke that one up, but break apart. I'll do this one. So let's say you got this area, and I like to kind of break it a little farther. But you see trimming involving. So you could actually take sections through here. So if I go through the S, E, C, let's go redraw so you get a better idea of how this was sewed. Actually, I need to start from the beginning. So stop and home. So I'm at the end, okay. A little fast. Sorry about that. But you see how it started at the beginning. Let's do end, stop. But you saw how it sews the S and then so forth. So I may go ahead to my color object list. And I don't want that dot because I may want to come back and do that, or I may want to come back. That's my choice. So I may not want that dot. I'm going to skip over that. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that is sequenced by selection. So I'll move my dot below that. I also could do what they call the J key, because you see how this one's here, but this exits here, and this enters way up here. I could remove these by manually, or a quick way, I just hit the J key, and J means move things to the next closest object. So it's the closest joint. There's also a little icon through here that's on this toolbar. Let's see, right, apply closest joint. Right there, J. And then there's branching. So now I could go through here, and I could do the same thing through here. I don't want to go from here and trim and come back and forth on there. So I'm going to go ahead and break this letter apart. Take that and that one and break these two apart. Whoops, I usually should do one at a time. Sometimes you get little messages, and sometimes I hit the wrong way. So I'm going to sew this here and go through this design, select it by objects. I could do this by dragging and dropping the object. So in reality, I could say sew this one, then sew this one, but I want to sew this and move it down my list and so forth. And then I want to move this one maybe down my list after that one or so forth. That's time consuming. I really like this sequence tool by selecting that one. There, you see the trim up there, and select it. I'm going to sew this direction. So D, I, B, and then I'm going to come back and sew that dots before it comes up to the next one. Select that in there. You can see the connecting lines, and I like to have my connectors, show my connectors, is the dotted line. If it's a solid line, it's going to run to the next object. And that's where you're going to have to go through your object properties and verify your connection. Is it a jump more than a certain amount? I always recommend before a trim or color change to do a tie off. So if it's over 2 millimeters over there, it will trim on there. So you can still see the triangles. I'm going to go ahead and hit the J key. Now it just move all my entering exits from the next letter to the next closest area on there, as you see through here and through there. And that's up there. Then it's going to go through here, back through here. And of course, then I could do the counting, same direction, or as I said, from the hats, I could go through here and go through the sequence if I feel that's going to be good. If I want to end on the A instead of the last letter, I would select this one. So that means this is where it's going to end, to the left or end to the right. So right now it's ending to the G. So if I say center out and I want to end to the A because I felt that's more appropriate for the design, you can see now the connection went over there. And it starts at the end. Through here, as you can see the dotted line going right through there. And then it goes to the next object. So now it goes to there, goes to the word, whether I want to do the lines and that. So that's another way of doing editing for hats. Okay. And of course, you know, on this, you could always go through the values and take a look. Now, this is mostly looks like it was processed, and you may have additional nodes you are going through here and maybe have to reshape this tool. It might have been hand digitized. I don't know. It looks pretty clean, that like they went through and had pretty clean up. You can change your run stitches to curves so it might follow better, because you might have stitches popping out on there. You might have a couple little extra nodes. You may want to change to curves by hitting your space bar. We'll change it to smooth to a straight line. You have the capability of saying smooth the curves on this. Now this, depending on what kind of settings that you're on. If I do this at a 0.26, it'll probably distort this letter. It distorted the letter a little bit, but it changed it and kind of tried to follow that. I might have did a little more value than I should have, but you can do that with other designs by saying smooth it. You do have this capability with Vector Art and CorelDRAW and more. So I may want to change that and may not want to drastically change as much. Kind of smooth some of the nodes up here. And if I need to remove some of the handlebars, stitch angles, or control the stitch angles a little better to take the turn, I can do that. So may want to fill in the area a little better on there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take the range tool and put that back on the bottom, which I like. Whoops, a little too much. The travel, I like to have my tool out here so I can grab it and know where I'm at. I use the travel a lot. And then the redraw, it's nice to know if you're not familiar with the design of how it's going to sew. So now this is pretty well almost set for a hat. There might be some areas where, you know, I could go through this design and say, okay, measure this area, whether it's enough for serifs or not. So let's say we get to a font that has serifs on there, and you need to verify. When you do small letters, try to make sure you pick the right font up here. I'm probably have to go through another directory on there to see the right one that I'm trying to get. I don't see test force. This is bugging me what this one is. Can't tell if that is small fonts in there or not. Okay, why that's hopefully pulls up. Okay, here's a nice small serif font. Okay, that's quite small in there, as I mentioned. Box in this, or B, box in this area. You can see here's one that the stitch length is at 0.3. That's less than a half a needle. If you're using 75, 0.75, or otherwise 8012s, you know, you're 0.8. That's the needle. So what I mean by that, if I take my needle and I make a perfect circle and change that to my 75 or 8012s, I'm going to go 75s on there. That's the size of a needle. So if I put that dead center and put that over here, I just put two needles right on top of each other and probably destroyed it or pinched or make that real bad. So first thing I want to do is, you know, I got this design. It's all satin stitches except for the letter S through here. I don't even know where that S is. I think that's playing around with the first letter. Yeah. So let's ungroup this. So right now they got this going through here. They might have tried to sew that for a hat, but no, maybe not. But this S should have probably been the first one and sewed left to right. You could drag and drop, as I said. So now it sews that S first. And I think what they did, they needed the S straight, but then they tried to italicize everything over. So the first thing I would do is take this design on here, and don't worry about my needle selection. I would give it pole compensation, object properties, and go to pole compensation. They don't have any. So I would give it a little pole compensation and see if that's 0.2 is going to be enough. I'm going to box this area in. And I'm going to take this needle now and put that to the center here. And take that needle and put it there. It's almost touching. So in all reality, that's probably 0.75 or 7 something right there, 0.76. And I say 1 millimeter. So I could go back and try to reshape this by bringing these objects up, and I could grab left click and hold my shift key and bring it down. I could do a quick way there if I don't want to really make anything bolder. I could also grab these and maybe bring these up. Whoops, I didn't grab that node in there. I'm grabbing that one in there by accident. Maybe bring this up. Now I can measure that. Oh, okay, now it's 0.19, pretty good. And, you know, like I said, I could do that through all the fonts, make sure it's thicker, or I could do pole compensation. The other thing is, sometimes I like to take the letters and see, okay, that's a little slow, or rechange that letter. So we have a font that's very similar. I'm going to go object properties, and of course, it doesn't say small font, and that's actually 7 millimeters. Yeah, that could be, but you know, for inches, for those that want to know, the height is 0.3. So that's on a border. I would have selected a small font, maybe a small serif font. So I'm going to go through here and find a similar font. And I'm going to check my S fonts. And hopefully you can find like a small Times on there. So that may be a better font. That may look better. And so that, and of course, change that to have a little more pole compensation. And bring that maybe 30. And measure that. That's good enough, 0.05, that's just over a millimeter. The other thing is, if you have fonts and you tend to use fonts, you could reshape these small fonts to work for your Vantage. So I may like that font and replace that font through here, take this one out, because I didn't want serifs going back and forth and pounding just like the F. I may want to use something different. And that was the font. As you see through here, I could actually go through this font, box this area up, and say, hey, I want to reshape this so when a font gets a certain size, as I may want to have it a little bolder. So I will have that measurement of being over 1 millimeter in length. As you can see there, take my needle. Penetration right there. Now I got a nice gap in there, so there's a lot of material in there. Creates that, and won't pound stitches on top of stitches. I got that S, and I could go to my object and update my save the letter. Where is it? Create. I did do that, didn't I? Right there. Hold that S. Design, or object, I mean, apply style, create a user redefined letter. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I want that to happen anytime it gets below 8 millimeters. I may give it a name on here, but I'm going to use the default. So that means I redefine that letter. So if I ever use this letter again, and that lettering font, as you see, was small Times. So I'm going to take this font, grab that over here, object properties, and if I bring it to 8.1, you will see that gets very narrow, but it's probably just enough, 1 millimeter. But if I take that same font, bring that over, right click and drag and drop. Saw the arrow plus on my keyboard. When you hold the control key, you'll see a plus on there, or right click. So I'm going to take that font, object properties, and I know I said anything under that, I'm going to say 7.9. You see how it looks like it got edited because I got this use save version. As you see, it's been rechanged to be a little different on there because I've reshaped that font. So that's one way on there. So object properties, save version. See how it kind of it looks like it actually physically growing. That's because all these nodes were reshaped when I changed it. So now that allows it to be nice serif through here. And I could go through here and then see how this redraws for maybe a hat. So if I want a hat or some kind of garment. So that's another way of doing some editing. Of course, maybe I want to resequence these letters in the middle to see if these are objects. I may want to group them on there. So I may want to take this E, say group or branch. So I may say, hey, I want to say I for branching, and that's this tool right here. It really shows the middle first and down, but then sometimes it might go to the L part and shows different area. So I may want to sew from bottom up instead of top to bottom. I could use what they call branching. So I'm going to say I'm going to say my entering points here, exit points here. Take this L, and you see that little group there. That's what usually creates branching when you do a conversion from Corel over. It creates a bunch of objects. So there's actually more than one object here. So I could grab this and take that and say I'm going to say start here and maybe end here, and then of course I start from this E and maybe end there. That C is only one object through here, but this N is a bunch of objects. And actually you can see it does that serif, then it does this serif, tucks under, tucks this and this and this. So really I want this to go left to right. So I'm going to say I want to start here and maybe end over here. Take this I, start from I through here and end over here, and then my A looks pretty well set, but I was to say I'm going to start more from this area and end over here or to the top. And then finally through here, I could go through here, select this object, this object, this object. In fact, I'm going to go from, this is more the center. Select those objects and then do the L, then the E. Resequence it, so it should start from the first E, then N. Resequence that by numbers, by selection. So E, N, and so forth. And then do my C, and I probably want to sew that afterwards. So I'm going to select this, then my color. You could select by colors, and so forth. And then resequence that. Now if I go redraw, and it tells me it's been 1 hour of training. I'm turning my alarm off, and you can see how that sews from middle out, kind of like, almost like top to bottom. I may want to resequence this, go over here, and then that one over there. And I could just drag and drop it quick so it goes that direction. Okay. So hopefully I didn't confuse you all, or you didn't fall asleep. So I'm going to go ahead and attack this on there and put my sequence where I like to find it quickly. And my tool is back. Close this up, or actually get back to my screen. And I would like to thank you for attending today's Editing 1. I hope it was educational to you. I will be opening the lines up and any questionnaires. I will not record the questions. Some people are a little embarrassed to get their recording of questions, so don't be shy. So I'm going to go ahead and press stop